Today we are moving along in the stone/crystal mineral series. We're going to talk about ruby today. So throughout history, ruby has often been associated with vitality, courage, passion, nobility, and life force in and of itself. In many traditions, it's considered one of the most powerful stones for activating personal power and the heart's passionate expression. When we look at the astrological associations this stone has, we're looking at things like Leo, Aries, and Scorpio. Now, the planetary correspondences with this stone, we'll often find the planets of Sun and Mars to be most associated with ruby. When we're looking at the elemental forces, we're looking at probably the primary element being fire and the secondary element being earth. When we're looking at the energy points in the body, we would often associate this more with the root chakra and also the heart chakra as well. Now, where it's often found, we're looking at places like Myanmar, Thailand, Sri Lanka, Madagascar, Mozambique, just to name 5. There are many other places as well. And I'd like to remind you again that you can work with stones without actually necessarily obtaining them. So you can do that through either contributing to someone else's art, that'd be photography, painting, drawing of ruby, or you could also create that yourself, or you can also use it through visualization as well. So if you don't wish to contribute to the actual accumulation of stones, this is a great way in which you can still work with them without actually having to go out and purchase them or contribute to the potential destruction that sometimes occurs when collecting stones themselves. So when we're looking at how does this stone work with the body, work with our mind, what sort of metaphysical aspects does it have? I'd like to remind you, I'm not a medical practitioner, nor am I making claims that this stone will cure X, Y, and Z. I am simply expressing that it may assist with X, Y, and Z, and what you wish to do with that information is really up to you. So firstly, moving into the physical aspects or the physical attributions of the body that the stone often works well with, we're looking at how it can create increased vitality in the body, also physical stamina. It's quite good for working with the circulation and the blood as well, getting that moving and that chi around the body, warmth and energy, and also recovery of motivation after a period of exhaustion, especially when one's been working a lot, whether that be professional life, personal life, just really exerting oneself more than what one can handle, reaching to that point of exhaustion, and then being able to self-motivate again after that period of exhaustion. And symbolically, you would probably find a lot of traditions, they would associate that kind of red color with blood and life force as well. Now, when we're looking at the mental and emotional aspects that this stone can work with, we're looking at things like confidence, courage, passion, emotional resilience, and also devotion. When we're looking at the metaphysical, it's things like strengthening life force energy, awakening spiritual passion, increasing specific kind of manifestation through intention, through very focused intention actually, supporting energetic protection, encouraging authentic leadership, aligning desire with purpose, and activating courage on a spiritual path. So yeah, it's a kind of stone that allows people to feel like they're really fully participating in life, especially if they've become quite ungrounded, to really come down and play in life in its actual form in many aspects. So now I wanted to go through some of the areas around the world and what they have culturally and historically associated this stone with. So some of these are countries, some of these are more particular philosophies or particular cultures. First off, wanting to start with ancient India. So they would often call this stone like the king of precious stones. And in some Sanskrit texts, they would often describe rubies as carrying like an inner flame, and they would associate them with like nobility, prosperity, and spiritual merit. And rubies were traditionally often offered in places like temples, and they were worn by rulers of the time. Now, moving not too far away from there, but to the lands known as Myanmar these days, and they believed that these stones would often protect them in battle once upon a time. And they often tell stories like legends of warriors that carried them or embedded rubies actually into their flesh, so that the stone's protective power would become a real embodiment and part of them. Now, when we're looking at places like medieval Europe, and I guess it's very broad, right? We're talking about many different countries these days that encompass Europe, but more of the prominent stories that come out of Europe in that sort of medieval time is they would often associate rubies with things like royal authority, divine favor, and protection from misfortune as well. A lot of kings and nobles would wear them in their crowns and their rings and ceremonial regala. Now, moving back over to the Asian area, and we're looking a little bit more at the ancient Chinese traditions. They would often associate ruby with things like prosperity, good fortune, social status, and auspicious life energy. The gemstone was highly prized by imperial courts at particular times in ancient Chinese culture. And yeah, last thing I'm going to touch on some of the sort of biblical and sacred symbolism that you can find today that are associated with ruby. So they wrote about the ruby stone a fair bit in some of the biblical texts, and when they wrote about it, it was often in this sort of context symbolizing, wisdom, great value, spiritual wealth, and divine light. And I find that quite interesting because you'll often find with biblical texts they don't tend to focus too much on particular gemstones, but there's quite a lot of text written about ruby that still remains. Whether maybe there were more texts written about other stones once upon a time, that's also potentially true, but we can really only go by what remains today and what we can find and what's really available to the public as of now anyway. So if you've got any questions about ruby, have you got any other stones that you want me to record and share information on, leave that in the comment section down below. You can also reach out to me on various other social media platforms. They are in the description of this video, and we'll see you again soon.